When you pull out your credit card at the grocery or home improvement store, you probably don't think much about the sales tax you pay. But in many places, not all the tax money goes to the government. A chunk goes to the developers who built that shopping center or big box store. It's called tax increment financing, or TIF. University of Missouri-St. Louis political scientist Kenneth Thomas just published a study of the controversial development tool. He spoke with St. Louis Public Radio's Matt Sepik as part of our series Bound by Division. Thomas says TIF pits communities against each other, but results in little overall growth. And he says the St. Louis area is one of the nation's biggest TIF users.
Because we're in Missouri and because Missouri has sales tax TIF, most states don't. The St. Louis metro area is certainly higher than average.
One thing you found that's not surprising is that cities next to other cities that already use tax increment financing are more likely to adopt the practice.
It's a competitive dynamic. Cities are trying to attract investment. Governments in general need investment, so they'll have economic activity to tax. So they fight amongst each other for these investments. You can see cases where it's just, will Walmart go in one town or another?
That's one longstanding criticism, is that TIF pits communities against one another. A prime example is that tussle between Bridgeton and St. Anne over a Walmart. Is that a bigger problem in the St. Louis area than elsewhere with this panoply of municipalities that we have here?
Oh, yes. Certainly having more municipalities makes the competition more intense.
Every time there's a ribbon cutting on a new shopping center or a housing development that uses tax increment financing, our elected officials talk about all the jobs being created, retail jobs, construction jobs, and so forth. But with an 11% unemployment rate in the St. Louis area, TIF isn't exactly a silver bullet. What did you find out about job creation as it relates to tax increment financing?
Our research didn't address that specifically, but there's other research in terms of just the effectiveness and job creation of TIF. The East-West Gateway Council of Governments found that over the period from 1990 to 2007, cities put about $2 billion into retail TIFs and created 5,400 jobs, ultimately. You're told, well, this one's creating 200, this one's creating 300, and so on and so forth. But, those estimates never take into account the fact that, well, yes, we're going to create 200 jobs here, but what's going to happen is we're going to knock out 180 in the next mall over.
In the St. Louis area, what's the worst example, in your opinion, of a tax increment financing project? What should we just not be doing?
I would say what we should not be doing is giving retail TIFs in very well-off suburban municipalities. West County Center certainly stands out. A developer who couldn't redevelop that place without a subsidy shouldn't be in the business.
But there's an upside of TIF, too. I'm thinking of the old Northland Mall in Jennings. It was an eyesore for quite a few years, but now there's a Target and Schnucks, and it looks much nicer, and it appears to be doing well, and that was a result of tax increment financing.
Right, and I agree that some uses of TIF are worthwhile. The problem is most of them aren't. Retail TIFs we should look at with more scrutiny than, say, industrial TIFs. That's, what I would say about the perfect use of TIF.
What's the bottom line here? What's the net effect of all this tax increment financing and TIF-funded projects on our region overall?
It's very difficult to discern what we've gotten at all for the overall amount of TIF. TIF in general and economic development incentives in general mainly shift activity around. Some of it's new economic activity, but the vast majority of it's just shifted around.
That was St. Louis political science professor Kenneth Thomas. His study on tax increment financing is published in the journal Economic Development Quarterly. You can find a link to it at stlpublicradio.org.